Welcome back to Outdoorstype, and I'm here at Adelaide Railway Station to begin an exploration of the old Adelaide to Gawler line. Not only is it South Australia's first country railway, but it's also one of Australia's oldest railways. So let's take a look at the map and go exploring. The line was opened in 1857 from Adelaide to Gawler and was extended to Kapunda in 1860. Branches were later built from Gawler to Angaston and Truro, and the broad gauge network steadily expanded beyond Roseworthy. The line is 42 kilometres long, and it's now the longest and busiest line in Adelaide. Between Adelaide and Salisbury, the two broad gauge lines are paralleled by one standard gauge line, which is the Adelaide to Port Augusta line. A little north of Salisbury, the standard gauge line heads northwest, and twin broad gauge tracks become a single broad gauge track north of Gawler. None of the lines are in use beyond Gawler. Several line closures between 2010 and 2020 saw the track renewed and the line eventually electrified by 2022. The Gawler line has 26 stations stretching from Adelaide to Gawler. The stations are Adelaide, North Adelaide, Ovingham, Dudley Park, Islington, Kilburn, Dry Creek, Mawson Lakes, Greenfields, Parafield Gardens, Parafield, Chidder, Salisbury, Nerlutta, Elizabeth South, Elizabeth, Wammer, Broadmeadows, Smithfield, Manopara, Cudler, Tamberlin, Evanston, Gawler, Gawler Oval and Gawler Central. We'll delve into history and uncover some of the other stations to have once existed on the line, like Torrens Bridge and Tube Mills. It's time to dig a little deeper and fly a little higher as we go exploring the line from Adelaide to Gawler Central. Adelaide Railway Station was originally built in 1856 when Adelaide's first suburban railway line was built from the young inland town to the new wharves at Port Adelaide. As the networks of railways around SA grew, so did congestion at the station. The original 1856 buildings were demolished and replaced in 1900. In what's known as the Webb era of the 1920s, the grand station we see today was built with 13 platforms. The ACER development in the late 1980s saw the complete transformation of the area and refurbishment of the station building primarily as a casino. The heritage-listed Y cabin that sits derelict at the divergence of the South and Port North lines apparently closed in 1988. Torrens Bridge Station opened as Bowden Junction in 1883 following a local petition and had two platforms, buildings and a footbridge. It was near the River Torrens Railway Bridge and was initially the closest to Adelaide Station, so passengers could change between Port and Gawler line trains. The station closed in 1888, making it South Australia's first railway station closure, and the structures were relocated to Croydon Station. No remnants exist today, but the nearby pedestrian crossing or underpass indicates its location. To begin with, the Port and the North lines shared the same bridge. The amount of traffic became too great for the original bridge, and a new bridge was completed in 1877. A second bridge was added in 1911 and provided the North line with its own two tracks. This was also around the time the Jail Loop to Mile End was built. A bit of bridge shuffling occurred in 1925, and the old 1877 Port Line Bridge was removed and replaced with the 1911 North Line Bridge, while the North Line received a new bridge. Confused much? So there's three bridges here these days. You can see the bowstring bridge behind me, that's the oldest bridge, and then the 1925 bridge further away from shot there, which now carries the line to Port Adelaide and Outer Harbour. Recently there was a grade separation project of the junction here, and now the Outer Harbour line runs underneath the Gawler line and the interstate line, removing the need for the old junction that was once here. Opened in 1857, North Adelaide Station is the oldest surviving building on the Adelaide to Gawler line. It's actually the third oldest railway building in the state after Bowden and Alberton Station. It's actually the fourth oldest surviving railway station building in the entire country. This was a busy place back in the day. There was goods sidings and a wood yard just the other side where the standard gauge line runs today. And there used to be a level crossing just behind me here where Park Terrace crossed the railway line. That's been replaced now with a major bridge overpass just behind camera there.
Ovingham Station appeared sometime in the 1880s.
Here we are at Dudley Park Station, and what a lovely place it is.
To depart from platform 1 is the 1:57 train to Gawler Central. First stop Islington.
We've reached one of the most important and busiest locations along the line, even today. There was once a TNT yard that was also used by Holden on the eastern side of the line, and that yard looks like it was the original freight yard in the area, but it had closed by the late 1990s. The Islington station is still close to the Regency Road Bridge, but has been completely updated. The Islington yards to the west of the main line are probably Adelaide's largest intermodal freight facility today. A little further on past Kilburn Station, the buildings of the old British tube mills are still there, but the station is gone. The Islington workshops were opened in 1891. It was the main servicing centre and training centre for the South Australian Railways until the loco servicing was transferred to Mile End in 1923. The workshops remained an integral part of the railway's operations until its transfer to Australian National in 1978. These days the facility is home to Rail First's rail maintenance facility located strategically on the Melbourne-Adelaide-Perth corridor. Let's go have a bit of a closer look, or at least as close as we can anyway. And like many old railway precincts, they've gone and turned it into an oldie. The Islington Workshop Station was originally inside the works complex near Churchill Road and was moved to the main line. It's now long gone, but the workshops are still in use. Islington Works was built to serve the adjacent workshops. The station was first closed in 2000 with all trains running express, and it was demolished finally in 2020 with the Gawler Line electrification project. Welcome to Kilburn. This station was opened in 1915 as Chicago, originally the name of the area because it was so busy around the Islington workshops and later the British tube mills factories. Tube Mills railway station was demolished in the late 80s. The British Tube Mills, later Tube Makers Factory, was located adjacent to the line and the station could only be accessed from the factory. The works were served by rail, originally located on both sides of Churchill Road, with a rail crossing going over Churchill Road. Grand Junction was a stopping place that lasted only 2 years in this area, from 1857 to 1859. The level crossing that was also here was replaced in 1977.
Welcome to Dry Creek Station. Now this station opened with the line and became a very busy junction point in 1913 when the Stockade line from Northfield reached here. I did a video on that a couple of years ago, so check that out. The Dry Creek Explosives Tramway also reached here in 1914. I also did a video on that one, so go back and check it out. And the junction to the Port Flat line is just behind me and it heads west to the Port Flat and the Port River. The station was upgraded in 1982 and a bogie exchange was installed. That bogie exchange was removed in 1996 when the broad gauge line was finally converted to standard gauge. And it kind of just proves how stupid the whole mixed gauge model really is. These days, the station is probably the place you'd want to send people for punishment. It's a bit of an abandon, hope all ye who enter kind of place. It's very industrial and dusty around here. Plenty of space around the station still remains. Maybe that's remnants of the yards and the stockyards and all that kind of thing that used to be here. But anyway, we'll keep moving. This whole area has been so extensively remodelled over the years that it's hard to tell what once was here. But the Horizon Dry Creek Motive Power Centre gives you some impression of the huge railway infrastructure that used to be here. Just north of the Port Wakefield Road Bridge is the Horizon Marshalling Yards. This huge marshalling yard has been here for quite some time, but it's a little difficult to get good access for photography.
Welcome to Mawson Lake Station. This was Adelaide's first station for over 20 years when it was built in 2006. We're out here in the brand new suburb of Mawson Lakes, although back in the day it kind of just used to be known as the swamps out the back of the levels. But at any rate, it's a very modern place. We'll have a quick look around. And as we look to the north here, if you look carefully in the distance, you can see the next station, Greenfield Station, not that far away up the line. Well, we are here now at Greenfield Station, and this is one of three relatively new stations introduced in the 1960s. It's also one of the only stations to still have a pedestrian underpass along the line after they were all closed due to safety concerns. But this looks like the original station building. It's been repainted and spruced up, but it's one of the original 1960s buildings. Well, here we are at Parafield Station, another one of the 1960s station. There's really not much to say about this station, except it's here. It's a very busy station these days, right near Kings Road and obviously Parafield Airport. We're a couple of stations away from Salisbury. You can see the standard gauge line there runs on the western side of the station, but there's nothing particularly notable. And so on our left here we have the down track and the standard gauge on the extreme left there, and then we have the up broad gauge on our right. This is another one of those sort of modern, mentally looking stations that's been very recently upgraded. And again, there's really not much to say. Salisbury became a key junction on the South Australia Railway's broad gauge Main North Line, serving local, regional and long distance passenger and freight trains to Broken Hill, Alice Springs and Kalgoorlie. Australia National converted the broad gauge Salisbury Junction to Port Pirie line to standard gauge in 1982. A new standard gauge line was built through Salisbury Station, separate from the broad gauge tracks and bypassing the Gawler line platforms. This single line has no platform or infrastructure at Salisbury, and the historic 1857 stone building, which included a signal box, was demolished when the standard gauge line opened. The station underwent a major revamp in the early 1980s, and these days it's one of the busiest stations on the Adelaide Metro rail system.
Welcome to Salisbury, and I'm standing in the park and ride car park, and the interchange is just behind camera there, and all of this used to be a busy freight yard. Salisbury Station opened in 1856, and a lot happened over the years, and the whole thing underwent a major revamp in the 1980s to what we see today. The old flour mill, which I think was in this area here, was demolished in 1990. But if you get a bit of an understanding of what was here through some of these historical photographs, maybe it'll make more sense why all of these spaces here in the centre of Salisbury are here. Let's have a bit of a look around. Just a little bit north of Salisbury is one of the line's only bridges, and that's the bridge over the Little Parra River. This bridge was built in 1889, and the stone wall supports still remain. Just the other side of this bridge is where the Main North Line and the standard gauge branches off to head towards Port Augusta, and the Penfield junction was once here as well, just a little bit north of that one. There is still a little stub siding, which is the last remains of the Penfield junction, just over the other side of this bridge.
So we're looking north here from Nerlutta here towards the old General Motors Holden factory. There's still remains of the siding to the General Motors Holden factory. We'll have a look. And this is where a triangle once branched off to the Penfield line, providing access to that line to trains from the north. The final branch in the area was a 700-metre line into the Holden car plant at Elizabeth, opened in 1959. This line diverged from the Gawler line just 2 kilometres north of Salisbury Station and primarily handled freight traffic with passenger trains during shift changes. The last passenger service on the Holden branch ran in 1992 and the freight ended when the Melbourne to Adelaide line was converted to standard gauge. I made a video on that little line too. Check it out in the description. Well, here we are at the road crossing here at Penfield. You can see rails there branching off the Gawler line, and perhaps even the remains of the bases of the level crossing alarms. But here is a reminder of Adelaide's powerhouse industrial future as it was in the 1950s. And a stark reminder of that industrial future that Adelaide's now lost. Now we're here at Elizabeth South, and we're looking west now towards DSTO and some of the other defence technology buildings. Elizabeth South, Elizabeth, Wommer and Broadmeadow stations were all built in the 1950s to serve the rapidly growing new suburbs. Elizabeth South Station was built in 1955, and like the other stations, it never had any sidings, but it did have a ticket office, a shelter and an underpass. The original station was demolished, and this monstrosity was rebuilt in 2012 as part of the Gawler Line revitalisation project. Again, all of these stations are very industrial and were built to specifications that make them vandal-proof. Elizabeth Station was built in 1960 to serve the newly established town. It was completely rebuilt as an island platform in 1999 and then completely rebuilt again in 2012 during the revitalisation project. A turnback facility just the other side of the station was also installed to enable trains to terminate at Elizabeth. But as of 2023, that turnback facility still has not been used for any scheduled services. Welcome to Wommer. Here we are at Broadmeadows Station. We're nearly out at Smithfield now, which was once the terminus of the line for a short time.
A lot has changed at these modern stations, particularly since the Gawler line upgrade, when all the underpasses were removed, and they're now all very heavy duty, very industrial and very electrified.
Smithfield was one of the original stations on the line. Built in 1857, it was briefly the terminus before the line's extension to Gawler. Nothing here reflects what used to be here once. A station building and ticket office of the same design as that at North Adelaide Station, built in 1856, was provided. A short branch line running due west to the Smithfield Munitions Storage Depot was built during World War II. I also made a video on this line, and you'll find the link in the description. The original station building and ticket office were demolished in 1987. By that time, the station building had been heavily vandalised. Shelters like the ones at Dry Creek were installed, and they remained until the station shelter we see today was built in 2001. Monopara opened in 1978 and was upgraded in 2012 with new platforms 60 metres south of the original. We're here at Cudler Railway Station, or Cudler Railway Station. This is essentially the only rural sort of station on the Adelaide suburban network. It's also one of Adelaide's least patronised railway stations. Not bad if you're the neighbours though. You've got your own railway station. The SAR erected the Tamburlaine sign at the 23-mile crossing in 1947. As the suburbs of Elizabeth and Monopara grew north and Gawler grew south, Tamburlaine and Evanston stations were built in the 1960s. Tamburlaine Station once had short platforms on the northern side of Clark Road, and the current station was built in 1986. Well, here we are at Evanston Station on Railway Circuit. Aside from the name of the street, there's literally nothing to like about Evanston Station. You can still get access to the Gawler Racecourse platform. And you can see when we get to the top of the platform just how close this station is to Gawler.
Well, we're here between Evanston and Gawler, just at the tip of the old Gawler turning triangle. And you know, one of my Facebook followers pointed out that there was some rail still in place here, and you know what? I think we've found it. And as per usual, we've also found some shopping trolleys. Here we are at the top end of the old Gawler turning triangle with the broad gauge rail still there in the grass.
The first railway station in Gawler was built in 1857, but it was demolished soon after to make way for a new building in 1879. The station, being about a mile short of the town, was originally connected by a bus service. Community pressure caused the bus to be replaced with a tram line which opened in 1879. These horse-drawn trams carried goods and passengers from the station along what's now 19th Street and Murray Street to a terminus near where Gawler Central Station is today. The tram line had sidings at May Brothers, Rodiger's and Dowson's Mill, and as it passed the James Martin & Co engineering works, a short siding allowed all the locomotives that were built at this engineering works to be moved along Murray Street to the main line. The Gawler line was quickly extended to Kapunda in 1860, and in 1911 the long-awaited extension of the railway to Angaston opened with North Gawler Station. This new railway, however, didn't necessarily make the tramway and its terminus redundant. It was still preferred by most passengers and wasn't closed until 1931. The tracks were lifted soon after.
Let's go and have a look around the Gawler railway station precinct. Gawler can be a busy place sometimes. Some of the trains actually terminate here rather than going all the way through to Gawler Central. There's plenty of heritage and it's very busy down here around the platforms. Behind me here used to be the old covered platform, apparently that's all now in storage and awaiting restoration, but we'll see what happens. Let's keep exploring. And so we're here now at the junction where the Roseworthy, Peterborough, Borough, Clare, all of those lines branched off the Gawler line, and this is what remains of that. And you've got the bridge over the Gawler River a bit further down there now shut off. The line is now cut off there. Perhaps that short section may be used as a siding for the Gawler line. The old King Street road bridge is now a footbridge. It was changed to allow for electrification works. Gawler Central is currently the terminus of the Adelaide to Gawler line. It was originally built in 1911 and opened as Williston, and then became North Gawler before becoming Gawler Central. There was originally goods yards here and an island platform, and the area was very busy as well with the terminus of the tramway.
Nowadays, it's the end of the Adelaide to Gawler line, and what an exploration we've had along the line from the city out here to the edge of the country. Well, that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Catch you then.